and I'm one of the admins here on The War at Home, If Only Someone Knew. Also, Guardians War Cry and Guardians War Cry YouTube channel. We also have a um, Instagram. I think it's Guardians. It's The War at Home GWC. I think I'll put a link in here. Anyway, I'm coming to you tonight. I've been kind of under the weather the last few weeks, and I'm sorry. I just realized I didn't tell you all that I was sick, but I was sick, and I didn't want you all to like try to figure out what I was saying in my horrible voice that I had going on. But all is better now, so I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see y'all. And if you haven't been to a live, I want you to understand that the lives are a uh, public live. And so your comments and your input can be seen by other people, but just being here shouldn't be an issue in order to listen and maybe make your life a little bit easier if you've been involved with people who are coercively controlling. Now, if we look at coercive control and we look at persuasion, persuasion is just this thing that they're trying to persuade you to their side. That's not the same as coercive control. Coercive control uses that underpinning of the work that's in Biderman's work and these um, people who have these high tendencies in the narcissistic traits um, contain some of the things that help bind people into these situations. We can have them in cults, we can have them in religion, we can have them in politics, we can have them at home, and I think in family situations. And I think it's important for us to try to get like a bigger picture understanding. I've kind of gone through the Biderman's chart of coercion, and now I'm kind of trying to help you to see in that fog, if you're in that fog, maybe how you can get out of that fog and defining your life to move and climb this mountain that you're in, because this is not easy and this is not a one size fits all. This is an exploration for you to understand, because it insults your intelligence if you're not taking the helm of your own ship. In that's in my processes a lot why I say not yourself but your, and then in quotation self, because I want you to see yourself as something that you can attain, that comes in here, and finally you get to be who you are, because you've looked at your values, you've looked at who you want to be, you've made the work grow to be who you want to be, because the abuser has a whole different plan. And when I came across that quote of, if you don't question something, what's the point of believing in it? So if you're in abuse, um, and or you've been abused, if you don't question this situation, then why believe it? If you're living in a marriage that is not fulfilling to you in what you feel like a marriage should be, or a friendship should be, or a work position should be, all the way out into what you think we should be as citizens of our own society. Those are the bigger questions, and coercive control is the underpinning of all abuse. So we need to consider it. We need to look at it and say, somebody's trying to coerce me into being and abusing me. This is basically what groomers do in that coercion of who you are. It's important to know if you're trying to protect your kids from abuse, if you're trying to protect your grand or your parents from being abused by out in the world. this is abuse. And so it's important, I think, for us to start to understand what that is. And coercive control answers that question. And Biderman's work, The Chart of Coercion, answers those questions. When we look at people being isolated, people being having their perception monopolized by another person or another entity, when we are humiliated or degraded because we're not going along with that system. You see, that kind of stuff insults your intelligence. So if you're not going to question what you're in, then what's the point of believing in it? You know, all of this is exhausting. It has threats. It has occasional indulgences. It has that demonstrating omnipotence, which is as if they are God, a God, excuse me. And it's forcing those trivial demands. All those things are part of that coercive control that Biderman spelled out. All of those things are in, not all of those things, but narcissists use these. Abusers use these because it's not just the narcissist, it's people that are con people, sociopaths, all kinds of different people. And people may not know to what varying degree they may be using this because they're continuing their family cycles. So it's important for everybody to understand and come in with some compassion and understanding that if you don't question where you've been, then what's the point of believing in it? And so if we look to um, this idea of, I got to get to my next point. You see, persuasion is the act of or fact of persuading someone or being persuaded to believe something. That's different because I think if you're being persuaded to believe it, it may be for the good. Like you need people to bat up against. But coercion is not that. Coercion uses those tactics in Biderman to get you to come over to where the abuser wants you to be because they're broken. And it's not your job to change somebody that's broken. Your job is to be the best person that you can be because when you have love and compassion for the person that you are, then you can bring that compassion out into the world more because you understand what it is that you need in order to feel loved. And so when I thought about this, being in the fog, we have to have people that come forward and say what it's like to sorry guys, I have a bunch of stuff I wanted to say. What it's like to live in these abusive kind of relationships. And when I did my little focus kind of on the cycles of abuse, the first one is the honeymoon stage. That's where the abuser is coercing your heart to get you trapped. And you don't understand that you're going into this trap of coercion, into this chaos, because it can just be over the top, um, filling you up to like, this is the best person, down to the depths of, I don't even know what I'm in, and where did that person I thought this person was go? Like you don't, it's that's that cognitive dissonance trying to figure who these people are. And so that's part of that cycle. The abuser coerces and coerces your desires with acts of hearts and flowers, which is what I was just talking about. And you see, and then they say they're sorry. All of this is part of that building of that trauma in those cycles. And if we look to part 2, that's that tension building, right? That's when we know something's going to happen because they've done this work, which is in Biderman's. They've done this work because they're trying to fill their need, which is in those narcissistic traits. And this is part of that cycle of abuse. So now you're in that tension where the abuser begins to show you their anger, their displeasure, their trivial, over seemingly trivial things that happen, but you need to pay attention because that's what's going to keep you safe. And then part 3 is the explosion, where they're over the top doing Biderman's stuff to cause that chaos. But through it all, I really want to hit this point of through it all in the cycle is that survival phase. That's where the target of abuse may experience cognitive dissonance and ultimately normalize the abuse to survive. Unaware or feeling trapped, the target continues to live in the cycle of abuse because you're not questioning that system that you're in. You're buying into it. You're being coerced into it. And I think that it's important for us to understand because we betray ourselves in these kind of situations. We might feel as though we've been in a war because we have. We've been fighting to be who we are or who we thought we are or who we thought we are as a unit or a group. And somebody's acting in a way that doesn't make sense to who they were or who we thought they were. And so I think we have to be gentle with ourselves and we have to offer ourselves a lot of compassion because coming out of the fog is part of that. The joke in with survivors is that you never thought you'd have to have a degree in order to figure out the relationship that you've been in. But you kind of do. I think sometimes I think we spend way too much time on the abuser and not so much time on our own growth, which is one of the reasons why I focus on it a lot. I think you need to know who your abusers are. You need to have an analogy of how they show up because there's a lot of confusion in that fog. And so you need to understand, you got to focus in on your body. How's your body responding? Because your body will tell you things. Intuition is the best thing you can do in keeping yourself safe. Because the research has taught us that. It's the survivor, it's the victim who needs to figure out how to get out of this, but they need our support. They need to know that they're not alone, which is one of the reasons this page is here, is because Deborah, who started this page, wanted to make sure that everybody would be able to see themselves and then go, that looks familiar. That's why it's a public page. And understand that thoughts are things. If we think something, then we can change that thought. And that's hard to do when you're in these kinds of situations. I think if you're in the fog, one of the best books to read, especially where the body is concerned, is The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, because he talks about the body and its responses to trauma. And I think that's important for people to understand. But I think it's important to understand that this process is like climbing a mountain. You know, you're going to, sometimes when you climb, you're going to plan. You know, there's maybe pitfalls if you understand what that terrain looks like, what that abuser looks like. So if you're going to see the abuser, you might plan for what that looks like. There may be pitfalls. You may need to rest a bit. You may need to eat and relax. You may need to pull yourself out of that. You may need to reroute. But wherever you are, you need to be gentle with self. You need to have compassion for this person, for where you have been, because you're the one that knows it. Don't be too hard on yourself. This is not a like we have to be from here to here by March 30th. That's not the way this works. You got to enjoy the view, the company we keep, the growth that we make, the courage that we have taken to overcome fear, the resilience, the defining who we are in self, and deciding this is who I want to be. And it takes time. It's not something that comes overnight, and it's complicated, but you are worth every step you take. You know, it's like, and I'm going to get a little political here, but it's not that I want to get political. I just think it's a good analogy. If we look at what happened with Renee Good in the United States, we have film, and we can see that some people on the right are trying to say that it's this way. Some people on the left are trying to say that it's this way. And my hope for us as caring people is that we don't get lost that a woman died. And that news cycle is coercing us to believe a certain way. That is your coercive control. You see, that the way that one scholar may look at it and another scholar may look at it, the missing point of all of that is that you need to look at it away from those influences into the value of who you are and decide what it is. And I mean, that's what we do when we're in a jury, is that we look at a situation and we see it for what it is as best we can. And that's kind of how we have to look at the relationships that we're in, or a situation where we may have a parent in a facility and they're acting differently. And so now we have to figure out what's going on. And then we have to push up against that system. Or we're in court with another parent who is abusive. And now we have to push up against that system. We have to understand the systems that we're going into. But I think the first thing we have to do is understand coercive control, what it looks like, how it shows up, and get back to that whole idea of my first quote that I came to, which was that, now if I can find it, sorry guys, let's see if it's in here. If we don't question something, what's the point of believing in it? Abusers don't want you to think for yourself. They want to control your thoughts and will try to coerce you into submission. That's that whole monopolizing your perception in Biderman's work. It's exhausting sometimes to listen to what people are doing. At the same time, you know, if you don't look within yourself and your values to see how all of this is affecting you, that's my challenge for you, is to look at Biderman's work, to look at the narcissistic traits, to see who these people are, to see what they're trying to get you to believe, to try to get you to understand, I want to climb a different mountain. And what does that mountain look like to me? And so, when I came out and I started talking to in a very public way, um, in here and doing these lives and things, I tell stories about things that have happened to me personally, because I feel like that if you know personal things in context, then you can see. One of the things that I heard a lot was, I just want people to stop yelling at me. And so eventually I got to a point where I was like, okay, so, I was taught you got to listen to other people's um, stuff so you can try to work it out and all that kind of stuff. No, you don't. If somebody's yelling in a manner that is causing you more chaos, then no, I'm not going to listen to it. I don't have to. There's no law that says I have to. There's only people that tell me I have to. And I don't believe that that's fair when I grew up with people who yelled and screamed, who said awful things to each other, who hurt each other in those awful ways of saying that you're not good enough. And so I came into, when I got with the right people that said, look at self. Who are you? I'm a person that doesn't like yelling and screaming. So I'm not going to participate in yelling and screaming. I like having conversation. I like challenging myself. I like other people who challenge me in a way that helps me grow, like that butterfly just trying to get out of the chrysalis, trying to get out of what society says I am, what my church says I am, what my family says I am, as to whether or not I believe those things. And I want the same for you, because I think we could have a better society in whole if we're caring about ourselves as much as we care about the welfare and the life of another person. Those are the words of Dick Van Dyke. That's what love is. When you care, it's a feeling of caring about the life and welfare of another person as much as you care about yourself. And I want you to know that you're cared for here. I hope this helps. We'll talk soon. Come out of the fog. Start looking at who those people are. Start looking, more importantly, at what your values are. Who are you? Who do you want to be? And start moving towards that. Listen to your thoughts, how your body responds when it's around somebody. If you feel agitated around somebody, this person's probably not good for you. Your body speaks, it tells you things. And most importantly, if you're in a situation that is unsafe, use your intuition. That little voice, it's your soul. It'll tell you how to get out safely. That's my hope. Take care.